Hey everyone, what's going on? We're here to talk about Fear Street Part 1, 1994, the Netflix movie that just recently came out, and it's going to be a three-part flick, so this is going to be a lot of fun to talk about. This is our first time doing film reviews on the channel, so please be patient and just have with us. I know we're late getting started compared to when I told some of you guys that we'd be going live, so apologies for that, but we're here to do our thing and talk about this movie that we both watched and have a little bit of fun with it. With me is Kyle Smith. We are both kind of getting into the Twitch stuff a little bit more, and we've both kind of had a little bit of a love for film and a desire to talk about it. So he's also a co-host of mine on the Purple People podcast. How's it going for you, man?
It's good. I was saying before we started, I'm glad that you invited me to do this. I've been wanting to do this for a long time. And yeah, you know what's great is my favorite part about this and the Purple People pod is the diversity between us all, because there are certain things that you and I both like and don't like, and they're not always overlapping. So this is going to be fun, and we're going to have, I don't know, it's just going to be cool to dive into. I've always wanted to do film reviews, so this is cool that we can do this on this kind of platform.
Yeah, feel free to ask questions, make comments. As you guys can see, this is a live show. Right now, we don't have everybody tuned in, but we just got started. So I'm not expecting a large number at the beginning. And hey, if nobody shows up, that's fine too. I'm all right with that. This content will be here for you to watch later. And if you want to do that too, that's great. So let's get to talking about this. Netflix seemed to kind of drop this out of nowhere because I had no clue that this was in the works. And honestly, I just kind of came across it while I was looking for something to watch on Netflix, and it just kind of exploded. Netflix has been advertising the heck out of this, and I believe it was the #1 movie on the platform since its release. So this is getting one heck of a lot of attention. And what were your impressions when you heard about this? Had you heard about it before?
I had heard nothing about it. That's the crazy part about it, right? So I am a horror fan, probably not as much into, I would say, the in-depth and seen as many horror movies as you or Mr. West has, our friend on the Purple People pod. But I love horror. I love that feeling of anticipation. And now that Netflix is kind of their own studio, and they have been for a little while, I expected good things when I heard about it, when I heard that it was a Netflix series. And as we started the show, I thought there were only 2 parts, because obviously I watched today. I saw there's going to be an ending and then going into another part. I didn't know there was going to be 3-part series. So that is really exciting.
Yeah, what's interesting to me is that they're going to take the series from the most recent point in time, the 94. Then they're going to go back in time and show what happened in previous instances. And to me, that is appealing in a way that it makes me curious how they're going to tell this story and what story is actually going to be told. Now, this has already been a bit of an established lore because the Fear Street brand is actually based on a Goosebumps story. Now, I'm a bit old for Goosebumps. That those books started coming out when I was a teenager, and I didn't get to read a lot of them. I don't know about you, Mr. Smith, but I'd never read these books, so I had nothing to base my movie knowledge on. So this was all fresh to me.
I remember one Goosebumps book that I absolutely fell in love with. I think it's the first book that I ever read on my own, and I was under the age of 10. It scared the crap out of me, but it was fun. And I did not. That's another thing. I'm going to learn a lot on this show, guys. So whoever's tuning in, sorry. This was kind of a cold review for me, but it's positive. I'll say that before we get into the weeds and the details. Yeah, I know how popular that was back in my younger days, but I only got into maybe a handful of those books. But I remember my favorite one still to this day because it stood out.
Yeah, so I was a bit surprised. I didn't know that until it showed up at the beginning of the movie in the opening credits, and I was like, what? Okay. So let me dive right into this here, because this is where it gets kind of a bit of a downhill slope for me. I sign into the movie and I start watching. I see that and I start thinking, oh boy, this is going to be a teeny bopper slasher flick.
Yep.
And it's going to just be absolutely something that I can't enjoy, even though I've been watching slasher flicks my entire life and I love them. So let's start things out. I'm going to say it right off the bat that I am not the intended audience for this movie, even though it should be. It is definitely gauged towards a younger audience. The cast is a younger cast. The body count's very low. The main players are all seemingly teen to pre-teenish. And I don't know, to me, there were some things about this movie that were just completely off, while there were other things that I really, really loved. So I'm really interested to start talking to you about this, because I am under the impression that you really enjoyed this.
And you know what? I hate to echo the same thing, but yes, if we could lay it out on a table like we were eating a meal, there are some things that I'm going to avoid, like Sam going through the buffet line. There are some things about the movie, especially there. I'm 33 years old, and I think you're a couple of years older than I am. When I'm watching
I'm 41,
yeah. When I'm watching two teenagers make out, I was a little uncomfortable there because I'm like, I feel weird about that because I'm old now.
Okay, this was something I was definitely going to jump into, but we can talk about this because it was my main issue.
Right.
The cast, not only is it supposed to be a high school cast, but to have the high schoolers that look so young in so many like near nude scenes.
Yeah.
With the lack of clothes and all that, it's like that made me feel really uncomfortable watching it alone as a grown man.
Okay, I'm glad it's the same. I'm at work, so I work at the airport here, and I caught bits and pieces. It was kind of a slow morning, so I got the first half done in the morning, and I'm like checking around. I'm like, oh my God, I hope somebody doesn't say anything. Nobody's going to see this, but yeah, it felt a little weird being singular. As odd as it sounds, if this was in a theater or in a group setting at my couch, I probably would have felt less awkward about it.
Right.
But I get for the plot and for the character development there, I get that this has got to be a part of it. But man, if this was a college age, something like a Van Wilder age setting, I wouldn't feel nearly as weird.
Right.
As I did today.
Because not only did the actresses feel young for what they were doing, I didn't feel like there was a lot of equality in the amount of skin being shown, and it was a lot of young girl stuff, and that was just kind of creepy to me. And let's talk about the school pride stuff in this movie, because where I grew up, I know that there's a bit of a rivalry between the schools for sports, but that kind of was a bit of an extreme there. And the school team names, the Witches and the Devils.
Yeah, that was funny. I actually, and let me go on a little bit of I don't want to say a rant here, but let me just get a little expletive out. I can appreciate now more than ever. I used to look at stuff and be very cynical and be like, well, that's not realistic, blah, blah, blah. You have to go into a movie like this with an open mind. So I'm going into it. I actually found the joy and the comedy of that, because I was like, oh, maybe if you're up in northern Massachusetts, if you went to Salem High School, you might be called the Witches. I don't remember what state this is based out of, but I'm laughing because I'm like, well, they named the mascot after what apparently the town is cursed in, which is really funny to me. But the level and intensity, it was odd. And the level and intensity that these high schools hated each other, it really brought back the era that this was supposed to be in 1994. I got more of an 80s vibe from it, but the rivalry kind of set that tone for, okay, I've seen this in other movies. Let's see where it goes. So that kind of kept me hooked. But the little details that you're talking about, that's the funny part too. So it had me a little intrigued.
Well, let's talk about that 90s vibe, because I felt it pretty good, especially in the soundtrack. The music hit that teenage part of my heart so much, because all those songs seemed to be popular when I was hitting around 13, 14 years old. So that brought back some great nostalgia for me. And if you're in that that area where those songs were popular when you were growing up, you are definitely going to feel some sort of attachment to those songs, and it'll help put you in that setting. And it was also kind of nice that you didn't see a whole lot of technology that would be around at that point. Yeah, I didn't see a lot of missteps when it came to things that would relate to that era. And that again is something that I found appealing about this film.
Yeah, that was the first thing that I put out here. I love a quick start to a film, and I only have maybe a paragraph worth of stuff here. I was like, you know what, I'm not going to write this down like you guys used to do for the Purple People Pod. I'm not going to sit down and write down notes for the entire movie. I tried to start in the beginning and said, let's just make it authentic and not pre-planned. I said, I love a quick start to a film and how it just immediately started right into it. And then 9 Inch Nails within 30 seconds of the start. That makes me a huge fan of this movie already. I heard some Bush in there. I know they ended with some White Zombie. The soundtrack for me is one of the biggest selling points, if not the biggest. I love that. And I love how they tie it in with casual moments within the film. Now, that particular scene might be really big or dramatic. I don't want to give anything away, but they casually throw it in at the right point of transition or the right background. And whoever did the music laid in with the scenarios of the movie laid out, bravo to you. That was my favorite part of it.
Well, we're definitely going to break into some spoilers here, so this isn't going to be a spoiler-free review, so we hope that you've already checked out the movie. If you haven't, by now might be a good time for you to pause this and go watch the movie and come back, because we are definitely going to start talking about some of the stuff that has been going on in this movie and what worked for us and what didn't. And I'll say the sound effects at times were way over the top, but that has been in action and horror movies for a long time. I mean, a knife doesn't go shing when you pull it out of a human body and stuff like that. I mean, it's cool for movie purposes and everything, but where I felt this movie really excelled was setting an atmosphere. Their use of lighting and neon lights in certain situations to be able to highlight what's going on and make a situation feel unique was a lot of fun. And there were scenes that were reminiscent to me of past horror movies, or at least tropes used in the horror genre. For example, I'm wearing my Ghostbuster shirt today, and that opening scene in the bookstore where she was walking through the aisle and the books were falling off the shelves and, all that kind of stuff. She used a book to block that knife. That kind of stuff gave me some Ghostbusters vibes, which was nice.
It's funny you mentioned the book falling. So like I said, I only have a couple of sentences written down. So the second thing right after the 9 Inch Nails comment was, I also like that it's got a creepy element of being in a mall. Those don't get enough love for how frightening that situation really could be. I couldn't imagine. I think one of the things that scared me a lot as a child, growing up in churches and big auditoriums and stuff, when you're there alone and there's low lighting, it is the hairs stand up on the back of my neck. And I don't know if it's a feeling of not knowing how deep this building is, or maybe feeling like you're being watched, but being exposed out in the open like that is very vulnerable. And I love that's one of my favorite things about any horror movie. And I put
it hit a lot of the great locales. I mean, it hit the hotels, it hit the grocery store, it hit the forest, it hit the police station, the high school. All those places are really common places for slasher films. So it was nice to see that they were paying some homage to those. And with the next movie coming up being seeming like more of a Friday the 13th-ish vibe, I'm interested to see how that's going to relate. So I don't know if each of these movies is going to kind of introduce their own tropes, whether they're all going to be homages or a little bit more of original takes on the films, but I'm interested to see where this is going.
I laughed about the beginning scene. It's a classic book fall out of nowhere for suspense. You got to love it. And I always laugh because you have to appreciate some of the goofiness of these films, because there's a lot of comedy in slasher flicks. So I love when in every movie, at least at one point, it just so happened to be in the beginning here, but when someone gets an opportunity to bounce back from someone trying to kill them, and in this situation, mostly getting stabbed or chopped with something, They just want to knock the killer out and then run away. They don't want to take advantage of that. But that wouldn't be practical for the movie. But that's one of the funnier things that I put in here. I said you knock the killer out instead of filleting him like a fish. Not a good choice, but that was pretty fun.
Yeah, there are some bad decisions, but we'll talk about that too. Or I'll talk a little bit more about that in a little bit more. But this also had the childhood trope of Stranger Things and other horror movies that involve kids where the adults are absolutely absent or useless.
Yep.
And the kids have to do it all on their own. And yeah, that would be a tough situation to explain for sure, but making the adults mostly villainous or just absolutely clueless wasn't the best. And it's hard to just kind of ignore that this town had like no adults outside of like the one at the school, the one at the jail, and the people at the hospital. That's it.
Yeah, there were a lot of absent parents and adults everywhere. Like that's really funny to me. And it's always I mean, I guess it's kind of, it needs to happen with that kind of setting. When you said Stranger Things, that's a really good comparison, not in the content, but I guess the group of people, because you have to fend for yourselves, like you were talking about, which is really funny because I like seeing how whoever wrote this movie, how they're going to make this 12-year-old think or this 14-year-old think. And I know we're going to get into which characters we liked and the development of them all, but it really, I like having more time to kind of peel back those onions and that layer of, okay, what's this character's motive here? What's their purpose? What are they really going to end up with at the end?
Yeah, the whole thing with them having to go to the rally where they were going to honor the dead kid and before the football game, and then they just kind of all took the field and fought. I don't think they ever played the football game.
They didn't. I didn't hear a score. I didn't hear anything about that. It was just disrespect and then a fight, and then on the way home, kind of skipped that. I kind of wanted to see who won that game.
Right. We didn't get to see whether it was the witches or the devils that got to win. And then after whatever happened on the bus, everything just seemed kind of chill. All that anger and anxiety from everyone on the bus chanting "kill, kill, kill," and then it's all gone.
Yeah, and then the rivalry is essentially over because I don't recall hearing about it after the bus and the car incident.
No, everybody was freaking out. Maybe they all got scared after the accident. I don't know. But to me, that's something that should have at least been mentioned, is that some people think they went too far or something like that, because it felt like a plot line that was going to come back later, but never really did. Normally, openings like that are left there for a reason. In this movie, they weren't. Yeah, it's like the whole drugs part of the whole thing. Having the person OD.
Yeah, that was really weird. I mean, it's a very realistic kind of vibe. That could be something that they would get into. But to keep the innocence of a high schooler and to bring that hardcore of an element in, I thought that was really maybe a little much. It was a strange. I like the creativity, how it was used at the end for the main character, who is, if you guys watch, we'll see, is essentially possessed, and that's another part of it that I really loved. It's the thing that scares me and terrifies me the most. The horror movies that I had the hardest time getting through is possession or demonic stuff, and there was an element of that in this movie, and I really, really liked that they brought that in there. I didn't expect that. That was not on my radar for this movie at all.
All right, so I need a minute with you on this, because I don't understand what was trying to kill them.
Right.
Let's break this down for a second. So we've got this killed woman, right?
Yep.
And she's writing names on a tablet and using those people to attack people that either touch her bones or have the blood of people that put their blood on her soil.
Yeah, I felt like it was more of
Question mark?
Bear with me here, because this is going to be an odd reference to it, but kind of like the mummy. You know, when you disturb that area that is supposed to be sacred and hasn't, been moved for however many hundreds of years, that happened. That's the kind of the vibe that I got there. They just so happen to have a crash. This poor innocent girl happens to stumble upon right where this woman's remains are, and that disturbs the whole force. And like Adam was saying, that she's wronged before, and that's why you're having this whole ordeal. I'm assuming, and maybe I missed it, maybe I didn't pay attention close enough and should have, but the woman that is possessing her was hung, and she was done wrong, and now she's coming back for revenge.
I assume we're going to get a lot more of that in the third part.
Right.
I think we're going to get more of an explanation of that at that point. But for me, I didn't really understand not only the villain's motivation, but why the transition was happening from, okay, here's this person. Are those other people who disrupted the witch's bones and couldn't free themselves of the curse? Is that the same way?
Yeah, it was really weird how it was picked and chosen, especially coming from right at the crash. They try to go back and make everything tidy and make it all better. You have the guy that essentially looks like early Jason with just a face covering and an axe. Right. Have him speed right by the young African-American kid to go after her. But then later
he never touched the bones, though, which was why he was left alone. He was on watch duty.
Right. And I remember seeing that, but it's very specific things you have to pick up, which I like, making me have to go back and think.
And he never got the blood on him either. So he never had them chasing down the blood, which I guess now they are hunting down using the blood.
Yeah, I think we're on the same page there.
Yeah, so if she okay, now that we're talking about the blood, we got to get into the meat and potatoes of this final scene here, or the big chase / end at the grocery store, because this idea they came up with is absolutely terrible. Absolutely terrible. Instead of using what the resources they had to take and spread amounts of her blood throughout the city to distract these monsters while they executed their plan, they put all the blood in one building so that all the killers would come to them,
right,
and hunt them all at the same time, and smeared blood on themselves to put themselves as the targets. Why would you do this? Get a rag, cut yourself, get blood, drive around and throw the bloody clothes out of the vehicle, and then have them hunt the vehicle or hunt the clothes that you've thrown out of the vehicle, rather than going after your friends and hacking them down.
I was thinking more of like a mannequin deal and have them dressed up, put them in clothes. That way you get all the villains in one spot, and then you could just have, I don't know, like a Duke Nukem style, and just.
But as you said too, the woodsman, he was stabbing at that guy's shirt in the clothes basket.
Right.
So he wasn't going after any humans. He was stabbing at that clothes.
Yeah, the same thought went through my mind. I mean, and I anybody with a logical brain would say that it's like, okay, so you condense yourself into a building that's going to be hard to get out of. You have to keep your one friend nearby because you're going to have to hopefully revive her to save her. But you're all going to be in there running around like a Royal Rumble, trying to save yourself. It was not the best plan that these kids came up with, but you know what? Looking at it now, I enjoy that kind of chaos, because teenagers probably would come up with something really dumb like that and think it was going to work.
All right, and I got to ask this because I didn't get it. What was the purpose of putting a lobster in the pile of blood?
I have no idea.
Maybe that just went over my head. But that scene in particular, just did they not want to put the lobster in there while she was drowning her? Because I don't think that.
Yeah, and that's what I thought. I thought, okay, for whatever reason, we're going to remove this lobster out. It's probably going to die, and you're going to put it in blood, but you're still going to drown the girl. You could have just left him in there and saved some time, I guess. I don't know. It took her a long time too. That was crazy. You know, that people can't really hold their breath that long. That girl survived a long time in that fish tank.
Yeah, she could have sped that along a little bit longer, but also, as I mentioned at the beginning of this, the body count was kind of low for a slasher film. I don't know if I'd go as far as to call this a slasher film, just because of really the lack of a body pile up.
Right.
And as a fan of slasher movies, I felt a lot of the kills were underwhelming. But we do got to talk about that meat cutter death, because that one was cool.
I was waiting for you to ask what was the best kill or favorite kill. That easily takes the cake for this movie. It's very thought out. And to be honest with you, I thought this was going to be like hero saves the day kind of deal. At the end of the movie, you see two pretty lengthy characters of the movie, and they're gone. And that kind of took me by surprise. I was like, oh, so we're not going to have a big group hug at the end of this movie. That's pretty cool. And that meat grinder scene, and especially the other characters seeing that girl put that way. I forgot her name. I'm sorry about that. But
I'm bad with names too. But
that was pretty intense. I was very happy with that.
I was enjoying watching those two characters, the younger brother and that girl that got put through the meat grinder. I liked watching their relationship grow a little bit.
Yeah.
So I was a bit surprised to see that come to an end the way it did. But it also makes me wonder if we're going to be seeing any of these characters again. But I don't think we can, because the other movies, like I said, are going to be a jump back in time. So basically, what we're going to be seeing in the other two movies might be explanations of why these other characters were chasing those other characters. Maybe learn a little bit about the history of the woodsman touching or bleeding on bones. I don't know. This was a bit of a confusing film for me, because I don't really understand what the monsters were that were chasing these people either. Of course, they're undead because the kid had been shot in the head, and there's a whole lot of other things. And they got like the T-1000 putting back together Terminator 2 kind of stuff going on. And I don't know.
We know that they're going to have a connection with the witch, because in periods of time, as explained in this movie, they get possessed. It's basically possession, right? And I'm interested to see if they've all had a run-in in the same spot where the witch was executed. But I'm not sure how. I don't know. At least they're doing a great job in making me ask why and how. But for this film, yes, it was a little all over the place. But in succession and going backwards, it may all make sense, and it might just be a masterpiece.
Okay, but now that we both kind of agree that it's possession, why did they disappear when she died? They didn't turn around and leave. They disappeared. Yeah. So are they actually physical beings? Because it looked like they were when they were trapped in the bathroom. But definitely, the way they just kind of disappeared makes you think that they're more of an apparition than a physical being.
Yeah, that begged the question, and it does now, especially now that they're presenting it this way, is what exactly are you fighting against? I'm thinking about the young lady who whistles, the killer. And right at the grocery store, she whips out the blade, and of course, you make noise. The guy turns around, and he's a marksman, and he stabs her. Well, that slows her down a little bit. But if you're an apparition, like you're saying, or a ghost, that's not going to matter.
Yeah, because the monsters took pain as well. When they got stabbed in the hand and stuff, they did feel pain. And they weren't super powered because they were able to block the attacks and do things like that. So it wasn't a Jason Voorhees style monster. So that they weren't really like Evil Dead monsters. They weren't ghosts. They're kind of their own thing, which is a combination of a lot of things, which is super complicated.
Yeah.
And I don't even really understand the rules even watching the movie. But I'm hoping that I can get a little bit more insight on what these monsters are and if they are stoppable in any kind of way.
Yeah, that's where I'm torn going forward is answering this question, what are they fighting and how do you beat them? That's probably the number one, because at the end of the film, and we're kind of jumping all over the place here, but you see Sarah, I think her name was, or Sam. No, that's the girlfriend. You see the girl is possessed and she's wrapped in a phone cord, and you're like, oh my God, that's crazy. You know, that sweet little girl, she's possessed. What are you fighting against? How do you compete against it? But also, I want to see this story and how these are all connected. Because right now it feels very random that you just have this Avengers cast of super badass villains chasing you around, and we're going to find creative ways to kill you. And it's like, okay, but where did you come from and why? Can I just get the why, please?
I will give this film a lot of credit because it didn't rely on jump scares the way a lot of modern movies have.
Yes.
I didn't feel like this was a corny attempt at horror to get jump scares, to get kids to be like, oh my God, look at it. There weren't monsters running up and growling in people's faces.
Right.
Instead of killing them right off the bat. I give them credit for creating focused monsters that were really going to attack and make their best efforts to eliminate these people that have disrupted the bones of their leader. And to me, that alone made it a bit more interesting than there's nothing more frustrating than watching a horror movie and seeing a monster that could kill someone and just have them growl in their face or something like that. Sure, it's intense, or but I prefer having growing a sense of atmosphere of fear around the characters rather than having a jump scare that just isn't very satisfying in any kind of way.
Right, and we're talking about jump scares and those kind of films. Like my favorite horror movie is The Conjuring, kind of an homage back to old possession and demonic.
Sure.
It doesn't have a lot of that, like you were saying. And you know what? When the way you said that made me think of another great sort of horror but comedy spinoff. It reminded me of the way it was shot and how you say, like, someone doesn't grab the camera to scare you. You're almost taken back at a distance to watch this movie. Yes, you'll see the characters up close with the camera angles that they're using in the shot, but the way that I felt I was watching this movie was kind of like just a little bit higher than everyone, kind of looking down and assessing the whole thing. It reminded me of Zombieland a little bit in the way I could see the entire set of this particular setting, and I could say, okay, cool. Especially in the grocery store, man. I see the young African-American kid turn around and slow. It's like, oh man, he's going to be behind him. I can feel it. And I felt kind of things closing in rather than seeing it from a point of view from a character. I really enjoyed that part of it.
Yeah, and I enjoyed the Silent Hill feel of the scene with the girl crying on the street and the boy coming up to console her. And that was another scene that I thought was really well done, especially with the lighting on the street and everything like that. And the fact he kept referring to how hot she was made me laugh.
See, that's a comedy that you need in a movie like this, because teenagers are going to think that way. And I love that so much. And I'm sitting in my head thinking, I'm like, isn't that your girlfriend right there too? Like, okay, man. But I want to go back to a point you made earlier when we started this. The lighting has to be noted again. It has to be praised. Mood can be set in so many ways. Tonal inflection, the music that's kind of low in the background. Like we said earlier, the soundtrack to this movie was on point. Absolutely. But the lighting will give you a sense of, hey, is this a happy scene? There will be more light. There will be nice, birds chirping in the background. There will be nice tones and music and happy chords. But in this, there's a lot of darkness, a lot of stuff you have to really pay attention to. And most of it, I would say at least half of it is shot at night, which I really, really enjoyed because you have to have that. So I love the lighting in this movie.
All right. So my last question for you before we give our overall impressions of this movie. Do life and death situations make you extremely horny like these kids?
Man, and that goes, I'll counter it with a question and then I'll answer yours. Do you follow the old horror movie guidelines like in Scream where it's, hey, don't say I'll be right back because you won't be. Or if you bone and you have sex, you're definitely going to die. You're definitely going to get killed. And the chances of you dying while having sex are through the roof.
Absolutely. You let your guard down. You focus a little bit on an extra little bit of skin and you're all done.
You know, I have to say it too, not to throw my stuff around like I'm somebody special or what, but I have a military background for you guys that don't watch the Purple People Pod and didn't know that already. And the amount of times in this movie for the negative side of it that I said, this could be solved with a firearm. You know, you were asking, does this situation, is it an aphrodisiac, right? It's going to turn you on. Are you going to get horny when somebody's chasing you? Not with these kind of people. I'm not chasing me. These are supernatural zombies is kind of what I thought of them. And I'm like, hold that thought until after they're all gone. You know, that scene where it's like, well, we have to take all the clothes because it's got blood on it. And I was like, oh God, this is like back when I used to run a Friday the 13th movie. I'm like, all right, I know there are going to be boobs in this. I just have to time it out right. Where are they going to be?
Yeah, so I always thought that was funny. The whole, what if we all die? What if these are our last moments? Do you want to die a virgin? The number of times you see that in a movie, just sneak in some sex scenes, it's just just absolutely wild. Okay, so we've talked for 36 minutes, about an hour and a half film now. And I feel like we're getting a little bit long-winded, so let's give our final idea to this movie. Did you like this movie? Did you love this movie? Did you not really like it? Where do you stand on the spectrum of this?
I'm in a happy medium. I don't hate this film at all. I've seen much worse. Would I throw it into my top 10 of all time? Absolutely not. If you can come in with an open mind, especially right now and when it was released in the thick of summer, and you like a little bit of an homage to a different era, you're going to like this movie. And I did. I liked the era in which it took place. I liked the soundtrack a lot, as we talked about, and the lighting. I liked the characters probably most of all because there was a diverse group. The only thing that I didn't like was it was a little sporadic and all over the place. But that might be what gets brought together in the second and the third. So it left me wanting more, if that answers your question.
Yeah, I'm with you on that I felt that this was an interesting movie. I felt really drawn in by a lot of the visuals with the lighting and the cool scenery and the interesting monsters that I'd never really seen before, trying to figure out what was going on. There were those moments where I was completely put off with like I said, some of the extra clothes removing scenes from the kids, and that just didn't really work for me very well. It's definitely targeted towards the younger audience, the lower body count, and the teens that were in the movie starring as the younger high school students. I don't think I would deter someone from watching this movie if they were to ask me about it. But I also don't think I'd say that it's a great movie. If someone asked me for something to watch on Netflix and they were in that younger demographic and enjoyed some of the more basic horror movies, I'd probably say check it out. But for an older fan like myself, I don't think that it's something that would appeal too much to them. So for that reason, I'll probably give it maybe like a 6-8 or a 7 out of 10 if I were to use a 10-point scale. It was definitely worth the watch. I was able to stay off my phone the entire time, which at that point, you kind of have a little bit of a victory. If I pick up that phone because I'm bored, then that's bad.
Yeah,
I was able to keep my phone on the table, and that alone is a good thing. But yeah, I mean, I think I was expecting something a bit more adult when I turned it on, and that's not really what this is going for. Since it's a Netflix and a Goosebumps R.L. Stine kind of thing, if I'd known that it was more of a Goosebumps thing going in, I might have lowered my expectations as far as it being a more adult-themed movie. But now that I kind of know that it's more geared towards the younger audience, I think I can go into the second and third movies and be a bit more prepared and maybe judge those a bit more efficiently.
Yeah, I think the good outweighs the bad in this movie. Not to say there isn't some things that you could critique, and probably critique it kind of hard. But I think and I'm not trying to put words in your mouth here, but to correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the number one thing that I'm getting after listening to us review this is the thing that we like the most is it was not cliche and it was a little different. And even if different is maybe weird or out of the ordinary, it's not predictable. And nothing in this was predictable. Yeah, I would have liked to have seen more violence because you and I are just kind of sick and twisted
Absolutely.
like that. We like slasher. But given what it is and what the basis of it is, yeah, I think this is a decent horror flick. I'm not going to go solid. I'm not going to say must see, but I was not underwhelmed and I was not disappointed. And like you said, you stayed off your phone. I had to use my phone to watch it, but I was very hooked, you know. As soon as I had more downtime, I was like, I've got to finish this. So I was anxious to see where it ended. So not bad at all.
So the second part of this will be coming out soon. I think I said Friday, right?
Yeah, that's what I read.
All right. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to get back together with you sometime next week, and we can break down part 2. And hopefully we can do that again here on Twitch and YouTube, because we did get a couple of viewers during this and they did stick around. So thank you to those who stuck around. Feel free to comment in the future and let us know what you thought of the movie, some questions, comments you had while watching it, or if you're just watching to see if it might be your kind of film, that's fine too. I know a lot of people that like to hear about spoilers and know what's going on in a movie or TV show before they watch it, and that's cool too. Everybody watches movies their own way, appreciates their own things. And there's always a lot of voices as to whether people like them or not. And that's why I'm glad that me and Mr. Smith here can kind of give our opinions on this movie. And I've heard some great things. I've heard some people that didn't care for it whatsoever. And I feel like this has been more of a movie that's been praised among a lot of people ever since its release. And since it's the #1 movie on Netflix, you know people are flocking to watch this thing. And they're all going to have opinions as well. And I don't know if they're going to match with mine or Mr. Smith's. And honestly, the way you were talking about it before we went into this, I thought your review was going to be a lot more glowing than it was from you. And I thought we were going to have a little bit more fighting, but it ended up to where we agreed on most things.
I think I was just happy to jump in and do a film review. I don't know if it was laziness on my part to start something of my own, but I like being a guest more than I like hosting. I think that's probably where most of my excitement was. But for me, this was good. This was a good introduction to doing film reviews because this is not normally something I would choose. I'm looking for in a horror movie something really dark, some really, really sad, violent content that is going to make me think and kind of make me uncomfortable. And I wasn't uncomfortable in this movie, minus the weird part that we talked about already. But yeah, you know, like I said, I don't want to beat a dead horse, but better than expected once I figured out, oh, this is where this is going. It was different, which I can appreciate.
Yeah, I loved the opening scene. And then from there, it got kind of confusing. And it still ended confusing for me. But with the 2 other movies coming up to be parts of this, I'm hoping I can get a little bit more light shed on the history of why everything is working the way it is and how it works out. Because I don't think we're supposed to know that right now.
I don't think so. We can look online for some answers, but I'm guessing just on a blind guess that a lot of people are going to say the same things we've said. So,
and I'm not going to go read the books. I'm not going to. I'm going to stick to the films and just let them do the talking for me as far as what this story is doing. And I'm going to discuss those with you hopefully next week for part 2.
Definitely. We'll get together and do a part 2 review.
And of course, as I mentioned earlier, this is our first movie review that we've been posting over to Twitch and YouTube through StreamYard, which again is a fantastic service that we use for both this and our Pro People podcast. And I have loved being able to use this, and through this service, we can talk about anything in the live chat. So if you're on Twitch or if you're on Facebook, you can comment and interact with us and let us know everything you're thinking, everything you're feeling, everything you're wondering. And we highly recommend that, and we will interact with you. We will. That's what we do. And also, I would like to keep doing this with other movies after this trilogy is done, and maybe get into some more adult, gory kind of topics. And for now, I'd kind of like to stick to more modern films, since that's what's kind of popular, or maybe we can start branching out to some of the classics a little bit later. But for now, I really enjoyed doing this, and I'm looking forward to next week.
Same here, man. Thanks for the invite. And you guys support Adam's stuff. You know, we'll push stuff at the end, much like we do on the football show. But I try to get in as well and give a like here and there and make some numbers go around. But when we get interaction on any show, we'll usually very quickly, if not right on the spot, we'll talk about your comments and get to it and bring you in as a part of the show and to help us out. So whoever watches this, thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks again to everyone. Thanks to Mr. Smith for sticking around, talking about this with us, because I look forward to doing this again next week. Stay bloody and have a good time.